tonight. I am so glad to be here, to join in this community gathering. My name is Sterling McElwaine. If memory serves me right, the last time I was amongst you was last summer, Juneteenth, in the park. We had a great time that day. It was amazing to see our community come together to celebrate Juneteenth. When I think back, way back to 1865, when those slaves in Texas finally heard that they were free, it had to be a very, very special day for them. Really, it was a great day in Negro history. And really, it was a great day in history for these United States of America. What? Oh, you were there. Oh, I'm sorry. I won't go on and on about Juneteenth. But as a former educator, you have to know that it's important to me for these young people to know their history. Some of these old people too. You know that old saying, if you don't know your history, you are doomed to repeat. So forgive my indulgence as I talk a little bit about old Juneteenth. So as I was saying, I wanted to, pardon me? Now, I'm a little old and hard of hearing, but did I hear you say, who is that old man? You must have missed the official introduction by Ms. Leslie. It's okay, well, I will just reintroduce myself to you and to you and to you all. You know, I think I'll just tell all y'all a few things about me. As I said, my name is Sterling McElwaine. But you can call me Unc, like most of my students did. I was born and raised in the big city, Indianapolis, Indiana. I was the youngest of my 3 siblings. All my life, I went to Indianapolis public schools, and then I went away to college, to university. In 1909, I graduated from Indiana University. Oh, no. And with my bachelor's degree in hand, came here to Lafayette to be an elementary school principal. It was the start of a 50-year career stint with the Lafayette school system. Not only was I the principal, but I was also taught several classes, and I was the playground supervisor. And for those of you who don't know, our colors were purple and gold. Well, while I was principal, in my spare time, that's a joke, I earned a master's degree in education from Indiana University. Now, about 12 years after I started teaching, I married Ethel Naomi White. She graduated from Denver University and was also a teacher. She was my wife of 50 years. And we were blessed with 2 children, Naomi Kate, our daughter, and Sterling Jr., our son. Now, a few years after we got married, In 1923, a new Lincoln School was built. Brand new Lincoln Elementary opened at the corner of 14th Street and Salem Street. Lincoln School had overcome its humble beginnings from a rented building from the AME Church on Ferry Street and was now a brand new brick building that cost just over $56,000. This new school, it was a big step for the Lafayette School Board. Lincoln students finally had a school building that was equal to the other schools in Lafayette. It was still separate, but it was equal. It was a proud day for Lincoln students, for Lincoln teachers, and for me as Lincoln principal. Really, it was a proud day for the entire Negro community because there were hundreds of people who came and celebrated with us that day. Let me tell you about a couple of highlights during my teaching career. One of them you might have heard about. It's in 1929. There was a citywide competition to name a new exhibit at the Columbian Park Zoo. The new exhibit was going to be an elephant exhibit. All of the elementary schools, they competed to raise funds to name the new exhibit. Well, the Lincoln students, both the boys and the girls, they worked hard to raise money. And in fact, they went past their fundraising goal and won the contest. My students got to name the new exhibit. And they named that elephant Lincoln for Lincoln School. That was just one of the proud days in Lincoln Elementary School history. Another highlight of my teaching career was when some of my friends, along with the school superintendent and the Lafayette PTA and some other school principals, they made me king for a day. Man, they really surprised me that day. A program honoring me was held at Jefferson High School. I was awarded a lifetime membership in the Lafayette Classroom Teachers Association, and later, that same group awarded me a lifetime membership in the State Classroom Teachers Association. I was the only person who had that award during that particular time. Well, time passed by and I retired from being a principal in 1951. Believe it or not, that was the year Lincoln School students were integral with the white schools here in Lafayette. That's right, 1951, 3 years before Brown versus Board of Education. I know some of you here tonight are shocked in hearing that, but that's what happened. It was a pivotal year here in Lafayette, Indiana for the students. It's a pivotal year for education, and it was a pivotal year for me as well. After the closing of Lincoln, and for the next 25 years or so, the building was used in several ways. It served as a temporary campus for Vinton Elementary students when Vinton School was being remodeled. It also was later used for the junior high students when Sunnyside was being built. It later served as classes for special education students who were physically disabled. And then the building also was repurposed to serve as the elementary school book rental depository. I myself spent several years as director of that program, and I fully retired in 1961, 10 years later. The year before my retirement, in that job as manager of the school book rental depository, I made about $10,000 a year. Back then, that was some money, y'all.
Okay.
Well, upon my full retirement, there were several parties to celebrate my retirement. Some parties and different events around the community. But I have to tell you, the crowning event happened on Father's Day in 1961, when more than 150 of my former students came home to celebrate me. There was a citywide celebration at the YWCA. Again, this was 1961. I was 74 years old. This is probably a few years before several of y'all were even born. But I tell you, I was so proud of my students. Their success in various careers throughout the entire United States was as great a tribute as any teacher could have. It was a proud. You know, retirement is not for everyone. And I kind of needed something to do. So I wanted to keep busy and be involved in my community. So I was a member of the Human Relations Council. I was a member of the Indiana School Men's Club, and I was on the board of the Red Cross and Society for Crippled Children and Adults. In fact, I served as the chair of the Easter Seals Project in 1964. I was involved in a few other community activities, like the Lafayette Principals Club, and served for more than 20 years as the clerk of the Lafayette School Employees Credit Union. I still held that position after retirement. Frankly, I was proud to be trusted with handling the money. I don't want to brag, but I received a few more recognitions and awards over time. In 1964, I was invited to be included in a revision of the book, The Negro in the History of Indiana by John W. Light. Now this book, it contained biographies of leaders who made valuable contributions to the race, to the community, and the state, and the nation. Mr. Light, he believed that I deserved to be in the book because he had followed my life and my community involvement and contributions throughout the years. Well, there was one proud moment for me to be included in that book. Then in 1965, I received the Journal and Courier George Award for outstanding leadership and community service. Later on, I was proud to receive a citation from the Indiana State Federation of Colored Women's Clubs for my service and assistance to their members in their district and their state conventions. I was even more proud to be honored by our local group, the Mary L. Federated Club, for 50 years of service in education. I was also proud to receive an award from the Masons of Floyd Lodge in 1964. I tell you, there's just something special about being recognized and honored by members of your own culture. For many years before and after my retirement, I was a member of Second Baptist Church, where I served as a clerk, as a treasurer, as a chairman of the trustee board, a Sunday school teacher, sang in the choir and the men's chorus. My students know I love to sing. And I can just think it. Amen. 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 I don't know who said that, but that is the right line. As I said, my students know I love to sing, and I just pick up a tune at any time. In my retirement, I also really like to travel. Both me and my wife, we spent time in the tropical islands and in Canada. And even a few years before, in 1959, I attended the 50th year class reunion of my graduating class from Indiana University. That was a great fun time. Well, I said enough for tonight. Frankly, that's all I can remember. 84, your memory gets a little foggy. And I don't want someone else out there saying, that old man is saying the same thing over and over again. On the other hand, you know what they say in education. If you don't say it more than one time, these young people ain't gonna get it. I just want to thank y'all for listening to me. Pray that y'all have a blessed evening. Thank you. I did not have a timepiece, but it probably should have been about 15 minutes. Is it 7:45-ish?
7:26.
Oh, we started at 7. I'm sorry. 7. Yeah, so it might have been 20. Okay. I have some time for questions. And then if y'all would indulge me for 5 minutes, after we'll do Q&A. And then if we have time, I would really like to read a speech by Ms. McElwaine. It's written, it was actually, the files have a handwritten copy of his speech. And he had some nice handwriting, but a little of that cursive just kind of kept going for me. And so I had to type it in terms of using my computer. But it's clear, but it's his writing, it's his thoughts. And I didn't think I could really just do them in the same way and do them justice. I might be able to do them a little bit more justice by reading it tonight. So let me stop first and see what kind of, y'all have questions and comments about anything that I've shared and or things I didn't share. I know there's some former students. I see at least 2. There might be more than 2. Is there more than 2 students out here who went to Lincoln School? I'm talking about Mrs. Hubbard, Lincoln, and Sammy. And Sam, I keep calling him Sam. He's Sam. Is there anybody else? Probably not. Mrs. Hubbard, where did you go? I know there was an article in the newspaper about you and some of your remembrances of Lincoln School. When were you there? Just the 20s, the 30s, I don't know.
Yeah.
80, probably 80 plus years.
Yeah.
That might put you there in the 40s.
Yeah.
It was a school, y'all, from first grade through eighth grade. And then the students left there and went to high school to Jeff. Sammy, when were you there?
I was 1948, 49, 51.
Okay.
Fourth grade, third, fourth, Miss Millie Holman and Orlando Renro.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. So does anybody have questions or comments? Yes?
It was a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, yes, it was.
Very well done. Did you, I know that the History Association has documents, but
Yeah.
did you create this particular piece and how was that process for you?
What I shared with y'all, I'm gonna talk, she asked me, I don't see Leslie, but Leslie, as we talked about the program, she said, Josh, if you get asked questions, will you answer as Mr. McElwaine or will you answer as Josh? And I said, it kind of depends on what they ask. You know, if they ask, and Renee is asking about the process. So I'm gonna answer as Josh, all right, because she's asking me about the process. If something else comes up, I may answer in a different way. I looked at the material and I picked out things I thought people could either relate to and or would be of interest, a lot of facts as opposed to anecdotal information. And then I kind of put it in the order. And there's some dates that are out of order, like the 1959 50-year school reunion. That really should have come earlier than his full retirement in 1961. But I just kind of, it was a proud moment for him and I wanted to include it. So I included it at the end. So looking at the information, thinking about what might be of interest to folks, I really want to talk more about the students. So I still don't think this is my last time presenting this. To me, I had to somehow still touch y'all, the audience, and not just give y'all facts. So a couple of things, like when I said, we got to teach the young folks need to know history, and some old folks too. You know, that's just me staying in touch with y'all, and hopefully y'all staying in touch with me. So little things like that I put in. And then I probably, without thinking about it, I wrote it in such a way that I wrote it kind of the way that I speak, in terms of not long sentences. There are a few that were long. But that process for me is just looking at the material, studying it, picking out what's important, trying to put it together where it'll be smooth in terms of anyone who hears it, and then just choosing to do that oral interpretation. Yes, I wear that hat. That's actually my hat. I used to call it my traveling hat. Some of y'all know me a little better than others. There's some folks in the audience I might not know, but I see a lot of faces that I do know. I used to put on that hat when we would travel with our kids. So I just call it my traveling hat. And so it's a hat of that style. I looked at pictures of him with, oh, I forgot to put on my glasses. Oh my goodness. Did the whole thing without glasses. We're here in my pocket. He wore, I'm going in. He wore glasses. And so I had hoped to look a little bit more like him in my glasses and my hat, and know that it would change me for most of y'all who don't see me in glasses. You know, so you can't believe I just hit me that I didn't wear them. All right. So does that answer your question, Renee? Other questions? Okay, she's my wife. I can wait now. That might not be the best possible thing to do, but that's what I'm gonna do. You go ahead, and then Mrs. Foster, and then James, you still have a question.
Thank you. Really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you.
Can you talk a bit about the experience of integration in Lafayette and why did it precede the country's decision a few years later? And can you just give some thoughts to that?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't read enough in his file to see that it worked or not. What I do know is that there was a state law that happened prior to 1951. Believe it or not, again, in Indiana, it was a state law. And Kelly, if I misstate any fact and you know something, just correct me. I will not be embarrassed about it, because I don't want to tell people the wrong thing. But that's something that I saw in the research. That there was a state law, and then the school building, which I didn't say as much about. Did you know about the AME thing with it? The school building started out as a rented building way back before the turn of the century, like 18. There is a great timeline that I kept back in 1869. That's when the school first started. Rented building, AME Church, Ferry Street. And then they built 2 wood frame buildings. And that happened, I think, in about 1880. And so when they built this new school in 1923, that was a big deal. And it was a big deal that the school board did make that decision, but also it's my understanding that the building was not really in great repair. So where the kids were going to school was not a great school building in terms of facilities. So there are pictures of Mr. McElwaine with some of the school board members. When it came time to integrate, I didn't see a lot of history there. They just made that decision and those students were reassigned. I'm sure that's why I use the word pivotal year. That was me again. That's not in the, because I'm sure there were some strains on neighborhoods, on homes, on teachers. I've heard a few stories, but not enough to document anything yet. And I haven't looked in any other files for that information. Yes. I'm sorry.
Do you know if the teachers transferred too, or did they lose their jobs because kids got moved to the others?
Sam, you got an answer to that question? You remember something? The teachers, when integration started in 1951, what happened to the teachers at Lincoln? It's not in the file. And there is a dissertation that I did not read the entire dissertation. Is it Ruth Anderson? There's a dissertation from Purdue.
There's a dissertation out of Bloomington as well.
Okay.
And that one traces the changes to the Indiana Constitution. And so the original Constitution had something like, free education for all. And then the second Constitution, reimposed that. And then in the education system, I think at the time, education was not, the resources were not put in. And so both white schools and, and black schools, at least most, children were still, in helping their parents on the private farms and so forth.
Right.
But then there was that bit in the Constitution of free public education for all. And it was on that account that some of the pressures were brought on, both in terms of general education in the whole state of Indiana, and then particularly the segregation nature of things. And so this went on as far as the state. This became a battle about some of the kind of wording of the thing in the Constitution. And so this is how later, at the time, they inserted the kind of thing of free education only for white students. But there was an attorney, I think, in Indianapolis and so forth. There were some legal people that were involved in contesting that. And so that there was a bill that was put into the legislature, Parliament. And so the battle took place over there until, so that 5 years before, Brown versus Board of Education, I think that, long before that Indiana was set on the process of integrating schools. But of course, there was problems with that as well, because the resources were so little and the schools were so few. And then with the increased number of students, then what happened was that they started building the kind of schools on the outskirts, whereas most of the black people were in the urban centers and interior. So by setting it on the outskirts, it made it impossible because it was tied to property rates and so forth. And then it meant that the school was segregated in that way. And it was in that struggle that they first started busing and pursue busing and then move people out there. So, correct, I think that before this, it is due to that struggle that arose out of the Constitution and the wording in there that made it available. The claim was that the the Constitution allows for free education for all. And to some of that places, it struggles.
Thank you. Mrs. Foster?
Yes, I want to know, when did you leave Lafayette area?
When, oh.
Not Josh.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I realized. I was nothing back in that.
Would have been careful.
Well, I must say that actually I did not leave the Lafayette area. In fact, when I was about 84 years old, I had a car accident and ended up in the hospital here in Lafayette. And I'm going to stop there for now.
But the reason why I asked that, I want to know, when did you die? Then I make my point.
Well, I have to say that in my best attempt to stay alive, I didn't want to have to tell you that within that car accident, and which was my fault, by the way, I was in the hospital for a few days. And then about a week later, after I got out of the hospital, I died at my home about October 12th at 84 years of age. So what you see is just a reincarnation.
Bravo.
And I'm hoping to live, be reincarnated a little bit longer from this point.
Well, the reason I asked is because I had the opportunity to know two of your teachers, Miss Winrow and Miss Silas. And I came from, well, Second Baptist and Bethlehem, because they both were in two different churches. And they graciously allowed me to be a part of the Mariel Club. I was the youngest member. And I was a newlywed. And so they saw something in me, and I got a lot of wisdom from them, and also being in Mariel Club and the National Association of Colored Women. So I was introduced to that organization, those two organizations by those two lovely ladies that were very tough on me. They wanted me to learn how to be a woman, a Black woman. And so it was really an interesting group. Like I said, it was all older ladies. I was the youngest one. I was 20 years old. And they allowed me to come and be into their group at that age.
What was old? I need to know the number, what you call it, old, what was their age?
Over 20.
No, Andrew is over 30.
They were older than me.
Yeah.
Some wisdom.
Yeah, yeah.
James, you still have a question?
My question is for Josh. I'll wait till Josh comes back.
Rita, is your question?
For Josh, my question is for Josh.
I see Phil. Phil, right? Phil.
Steven.
Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, I'm sorry. John, what about you? You had a question or comment?
I have a question.
Okay.
My question is, you mentioned your home. Can you share with us the address of your home?
Well, that foggy memory of mine is just not allowing me to pull up that address. I am so sorry. You know, Indianapolis was a big city for a little kid like me. And I don't at this moment remember. Maybe check with me later and I might be able to come up.
Did you not have a home here? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. But I don't know that address. I'm gonna have to research that. Unless, pardon, Kelly?
I don't know either.
In the Lincoln Heights area? I don't think I readily saw that, seriously. I don't think it was just there standing out. I might have missed it. I will look at Okay, what's your question, Jack?
Unlike others who really appreciate this taking place, and I was curious about the process of the decision to do him, and I appreciate the involvement of the Historical Association, because I think they are quiet heroes in this community. With this effort to make sure history is shared. I know they have lots of effort to do that, but a lot of us don't respond the way we should. And boy, this was a great way to really share something important as his life. How did that decision come about?
There's someone who's not able to be with us tonight. She has a family health situation that she needs to take care of, so she could not be here. But Diana Weiss asked me for the Juneteenth. Well, yeah, she asked me for the Juneteenth thing. Would I consider doing this, sharing some information about Mr. McElwaine? And she knows that I had done something similar for a walking tour of the Wabash area neighborhood a few years ago. I don't remember exactly when. And so I think she asked me based on that. And I said, okay, frankly, I didn't know anything about it. I knew about the school. That's all I knew. I had actually, it's not true, and I should check my research. Actually, for the diversity roundtable, some of y'all may remember, I did a presentation on when schools were segregated or something. It was a presentation on the Black neighborhood and what happened with that Black neighborhood, what St. Elizabeth was. I did that for the diversity roundtable. And so actually within that context, I had some conversations and found out some things about integration that I kind of forgot about just now, but that was after it had already been established. But, you know, I don't remember anyone ever mentioning his name to me. So when Diana mentioned it, and then I went up to the History Center, actually this is the History Center. Y'all have a different name for that. Oh, the Arbor, right, genealogy. When I went up there and saw what all was there, and I don't know that we've announced yet, and y'all have seen, but some of his plaques and some information about him is over here on this table. It was fascinating to me. There's another point that I'm going to say at some point in time here that I still didn't do enough research. I think y'all would be very surprised about. Read it.
That's what I was gonna ask you. What did you learn in the process of doing the research about Lafayette or even about him?
So I'll just tell y'all this point now, because I think there's a lot that can be built on this point, and also shows the influence. And Kelly, I do need some help because I didn't write both numbers down, and you may not remember. But from 1895 to 1912, more than 15 years, only 2 Negroes graduated from high school in Lafayette. And when from 1895 to 1912, 2 Negroes graduated from high school. When Lincoln's opened and started, and Mr. McElwaine had been there for a few years, they saw that number rising. Do you remember what that number is? I think it's over the next 10 to 15 years, I believe that it was more than 50 students, but I need to double check that. So nobody quote me on that. Graduating from high school. That means a lot of kids, like someone else said about performing or whatever, they just didn't go. Like Stephen said, they didn't go. You know what I'm saying, to school.
It was also, I think part of that presentation addressed what happens, with Black students not finishing school. And so part of it in the early years and between the 50s and so forth was, because they had to do work on the land and so forth. But then there was also in the development of that they could see that the motivation to remain in school was minimal. Because irrespective of whether anybody had a higher education or not, the job opportunities and what jobs they had, they fell back in that respect. So that the incentive to stay in school and succeed was not there in the social setup. And so that I think was a great contributor to what education meant in that society. was very difficult for parents or for people to argue that education is the source of your hope.
Go ahead, yes, ma'am. I'm listening to you.
Of the two graduates, were they male or female?
What I saw didn't say, but this is in that dissertation. So it may be some more details there, in a dissertation that's full right there in the history section. The entire copy is right there. You don't need to look it up online or anything. I don't think it identified them, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
So, question for Sterling. So when you, started the Lincoln School, how large was the African American population in Lafayette, Tippecanoe County?
Question for a librarian. I am sorry, Stephen, I'm trying to think. Go ahead, sir. Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't have an answer to the question, but in reading Paul Wood's comments about the school, some of you I'm sure know Paula was here years ago. She said there were not enough, depends on which side you want to go, Negroes or blacks in the community, except in Lafayette, in order to justify a school. Outside of that area, the Negroes were put into the public schools, into these county schools.
Yes, I have.
So I'm guessing the number was pretty small. That's not an answer, but it's got to be pretty small.
Yeah, reading about this, I only started reading about this when I saw your, this talk advertised. And I was intrigued by going back to, Tippecanoe County was constituted in about 1816 or 1825, something like that. At that time, there was something like 54 African-American people in Tippecanoe County. And in 10 years after that, it was something like 75. And I was concerned, I was worried about, at least the question that struck me about this is that if you follow natural development of a community and society, today we should have far more African Americans living in this place than there is now. This is just a visual in a kind of way. Then that leads me to ask, what are the conditions that reduce that kind of growth? What are the social conditions and so forth? Because I think just those numbers is indicative of a story about this place.
I didn't see any more hands raised. I know it's getting a little late. I think that it will probably take me about 4.5 minutes to read. I think this is a good time for me to read this paper that I have. Y'all don't mind? Y'all don't mind? Okay. Just try to listen to what he says. Just trying to make sure I don't confuse it with other things that I have here. And again, I'm just going to read it the way that. Pardon? But it's going to be my voice. I mean, there's some people in here who are used to my voice as well, and it's not quite the same.
Okay, I guess let's check.
Okay, thank you. It's a good reminder. But I printed this big enough I can see it without. Okay, so I did write an introductory paragraph to this that will. Well, the last time that I was amongst you, I didn't have enough time to share a few of my thoughts on the racial problems right here in Lafayette. With your permission, I want to share a portion of a speech that I wrote before I retired. Now, to not rely solely on my memory, I'm going to rely on my written notes to be clear in my thoughts. So y'all just bear with me for a few minutes. Title of my speech: How can we work together to meet the racial problems of our city? Now, mind you, this had to be somewhere way back in late 50s. And this is what he writes. Let us think together in friendly but sober fashion about one of America's most vital, if not the most vital, of present day problems. The problems of interracial and international goodwill, cooperation, and understanding. The unlovely story of race relations has been another deep concern of mine for many years. The eyes of the world have been and still are focused upon America and her methods of handling the issues involving the treatment of minorities, the Negro minority in particular. Our fascist enemies have made the problem a major weapon of propaganda in order to stir up internal strife among the racial elements that make America one nation. Racial segregation and discrimination brought about a spiritual gap between the races that is costly, stupid, and stupefying. They foster in minority groups a deadly feeling of inferiority, and in the majority group, an equally dangerous complex of superiority. At a time when our energies are needed to meet and solve together the crucial problems of post-war periods, we find a larger element of the population torn by resentment, suspicion, and hatred. Constant and soul-searing humiliation of prejudices serve to undermine the faith of the Negro and other minority groups in the foundation of the democracy they are asked to defend. Tensions have reached the explosive stage, and intelligent actions is needed in an Tensions have reached the explosive stage, and intelligent actions are needed. In an atomic age, we need an atomic understanding. We speak of America as the melting pot. The American pattern of inequality, discrimination, and prejudice has built up an attitude of resentment, cynicism, and bitterness to the end that today, our melting pot does not melt, nor has it ever melted. It is a seething cauldron of friction, misunderstanding, hatred, and fear, which can explode with volcanic force into a destructive holocaust, unless some sane and thoughtful efforts are made to prevent it. What are the problems that must be faced in Lafayette, where, according to court records and Judge Parkinson, we have a fine group of loyal, law-abiding citizens of the Negro race? Some say teach tolerance to solve our problems. When one is tolerant, it means he can endure. We must teach something more than a passive acceptance of other creatures. We should all enjoy knowing a friend whose looks and ways may be different from ours. Knowledge must lead to understanding in order that enjoyment may enrich life for all of us. Where can such tolerance be learned? At church, at school, at home? The school and the church must overcome the prejudices the youths have learned at home and at school and elsewhere. How can you teach tolerance unless you welcome into your midst those of other racial groups? Interracial Sunday found one group of Negroes in one white church and no whites in no Negro churches. Brotherhood Week to me was just lip service, like a gust of wind that made little ripples on the water, not enough to trouble the deep. The churches could teach human equalities that are so beautifully expressed in the sacred scriptures of all peoples, but not practiced in most American communities. There must be teaching, and reteaching solve these problems. There should be an interracial council with representatives of civic and religious organizations. There could be a committee to work out ways and means of lessening racial and religious tensions. You could join the NAACP, which has a junior branch at Purdue University. Know what they stand for. You who are in majority must prove to our community that we in minority have something to gain by being good, loyal citizens. Do the laws help? My answer is no. Education, organization, and teaching are our best weapons. We must put into practice Brotherhood Week every day in our thinking and our doing. Thank you for letting me do that.